Dad expected to walk me down the aisle without ever being there for me, so I chose my brother instead and he never saw it coming. So 25-ish years ago two dumb 20-year-olds got drunk and made me. They had and still have nothing in common, don't particularly like one another, but for some reason decided to keep me. I always lived with my mom full time. I love her, don't get me wrong, but she's pretty messy. I have 6 other half-siblings, 2 of them have the same dad. We always had a clean place to live and never went hungry or anything, but I know there were times that she did so we wouldn't. Mom very clearly loves all of us individually and as her family, she's just pretty irresponsible. My dad I'd say more has his shit together, but we're not close. He married Hildy, also mid-40s now, when I was 6-ish and they had my half-brothers Jesse, 16, and Kyle, 14, a few years later. They both have really good jobs and a nice house and cars. I know my dad paid child support but their lives simply were very different than mine. I'd come over every other weekend but after a while they were too busy with the other 2 so I'd just wait for dad to text me when he was available. He did, don't get me wrong, but he works a lot so I probably saw him once a month before I went to college, and after that we'd talk every now and then but mainly just see one another on holidays. One of these holidays, Hildy got kind of drunk and told me that after my mom had me my dad basically blocked her and just paid child support until his parents, my grandma and grandpa, basically shamed him for being a deadbeat and he got some visitation. That hurt a lot to hear, but it made a lot of my childhood make sense. It all came up because she was resentful that he had to pay my mom child support until I was 21, and was saying she had wished I'd skipped college. It's also sad, because I know she was busy with her kids, but I always thought she at least liked me. I know she hates my mom because it was maybe petty but when they had Jesse they replaced my room at their house with the nursery and put my stuff in another one, so my mom filed and was awarded much more child support than she had been getting, and that affected them. It's fine, there was free therapy at college and I'm actually doing great career and mental health wise now. In fact, my fiancé and I make about as much as they do, granted less property etc. so I'm in a good place. Literally freshman week I met my now fiancé John, 25, but we didn't start dating for 2 years and have been inseparable ever since. His family is amazing, super loving, involved but not pushy, and kind. They do have a lot of money, and if you don't believe me but even if they were broke I'd be so lucky to be marrying into their family. Just an example of how amazing they are, his mom gave him her grandmother's ring to propose and has offered me any and all of her or her sister's jewelry to borrow for the wedding. His dad helped my brother get a job in his industry, he deserved it, but it's a hard one to crack into, and even his sister is going to be my mo. Okay, maybe these are stupid examples, but they've told me before I don't need to apologize for my crazy and kind of trashy mom and have even thanked her for raising the love of their son's life. They're just so happy and positive and full of love, I'm so lucky. I've been so good about setting up boundaries, like with my mom, I laid it out that I'm not her best friend, she's not Lorelai Gilmore and I'm not Rory, I'm her daughter and always have been. We've had some come to Jesus moments but are in a much better place, and I am sad, but also very happy to say that she's been a much more responsible mother to my 4 youngest siblings than she was to my brother, Diff Dad, Jake, 23, and me. And my dad and I have never been close, but I've tried. When John and I were talking about getting engaged, he asked me if I wanted him to ask my dad's permission. At first I said no, what's the point? Then I was like, okay, I'm his only daughter, he's kind of traditional, and he was more or less there for me growing up. So he did, and dad was tickled pink just as I expected. They never said they had any money for the wedding or offered any, which wasn't shocking or anything, and I didn't ask. So after all that background, we're getting married soon. It will be in John's hometown, which is a pretty nice place that people go to for vacations and they know basically the whole town so it will be a huge event. His family, and to be honest, we want a big wedding, but since we're just starting our careers out, his parents are paying for the whole thing. I am paying for my dress though, and my mom and younger sibs travel. I kind of just assumed my dad would walk me down the aisle, but a few weeks ago at one of my showers, Hildy was talking with John's mom, who was saying how proud they must have been that I paid my own way through college. Hildy was like, oh yeah, it looked really hard, we're glad that we started saving towards our son's college funds a long time ago, they have more than enough for undergrad and probably grad school. I overheard this and confirmed with John's mom what she said. It hurt so bad. College was a struggle, there were times all I had were multivitamins and PB&Js, and only because my mom would send me $20 here and there. Don't get me wrong, I'm also proud of myself, and I know the boys are both their kids while I'm just my dad so of course they'll give them more, but it really solidified to me who and what I was to them. So I asked my brother Jake to walk me down the aisle. John and his family know about this and 100% support me. Hildy called me yesterday asking about the rehearsal dinner, where they'd need to be and when, and I told her they wouldn't need to be at the church or anything and could just go to the restaurant after. She was like, oh well, how will your dad practice walking you down the aisle? It was super awkward and I let her know Jake would be, but I was excited to see them. A few hours later my dad came to our condo and told me how disappointed he was. He said he's been dreaming of giving me away my whole life. I was in a pretty good headspace luckily and was just like, oh I didn't know you'd want to and didn't expect you to care, trying to be nonchalant and avoid drama. He was aggressive, though, and wouldn't let it go, saying I was trying to make him look like an idiot, and if Hildy hadn't asked he would have shown up thinking he'd walk me down the aisle. I asked him why he would assume that, and he looked at me like I was stupid. But I wanted to hear him say it, and he finally said that any father would expect that. I was just like, sure, but any other father probably didn't ignore their daughter for the first few months of their life, have as minimal custody as possible, or have college funds for some of their kids but not others. They probably did do things like take their daughters on vacation, attend a single father-daughter event, and help them out even though they were legally done. He got mad, but honestly couldn't even argue, and just said he wasn't sure if he approved of this marriage anymore. I told him I wasn't worried about that, and the truth was that we just simply weren't very important people to one another. He got really sad after that and left, and even though John agrees with my decisions, he said I should have given my dad the heads up about what I wanted from him at the wedding. As much as I value his opinion, I also feel like he doesn't get it. His family loves him and would do anything for him and has, while my dad has only ever done the bare legal minimum when I needed him. I never assumed he would help me, and he shouldn't assume he can play a role in my wedding. I know I'm not the asshole for having my brother walk me down the aisle, that's no debate. But was I wrong for not directly spelling out for my dad that he would be attending as a guest and only a guest? Update 1. I should have put on my big girl pants and just told my dad he would be a guest at my wedding and nothing more. I wasn't doing anyone a favor by not being upfront. I apologized, kind of, to my fiancé. He totally understood and admitted he doesn't really understand my family dynamic, which I told him I was glad for. I mentioned in some comments, but one of my dad's sons came out as trans a few years ago. I know they were hoping it was a phase, but to their credit they did let him take puberty blockers. Well, it's at this point not looking like a phase anymore, and I think that's where the whole my only daughter/only chance came from. In fact, after spending time with Hildy and hearing, with horror, about the things she's done, my Sil confided in me that she's pretty sure that if he and Hildy did have a daughter, he would refuse to walk me down the aisle before he was able to do it with her. My dad wrote me an email. I'm not going to post it because it's super lame and was just the same old song of poor him, his life is so hard. He wasn't ready to be a dad, he did the best he could. He's always loved me blah blah blah, no action items, no, probably false, promises to change, nothing new. No, he didn't offer any money for the wedding, but reiterated a lot that he's always dreamed of walking me down the aisle. He did the whole "oh I know I haven't been perfect and you deserved a better dad" and how he knew he could do better with his grandkids. I just replied that we looked forward to him being a guest at the wedding, and to remind me if they had any food allergies. Unfortunately I care a lot and I know their youngest allergies, but whatever. I had already decided who'd be walking me down the aisle by then, so it didn't matter. My Sil is one of my dearest friends, and she and my fiancé John have been very sweet to me about all of this. They are their parents' only 2 kids and very close. She's the one who convinced me to date John in the first place, and I can never stop thanking her. She and my Phil always go, don't laugh, to this amateur wrestling thing in our city whenever he's in town, drink a lot of beer, and either John or myself pick them up. It's a fun thing, and they've always done it just the 2 of them, so I was shocked and thrilled that she invited me to go with them this past weekend. My Phil kept bragging about his 2 daughters, and my Sil told me she's so excited to finally have a sister. I told them my new plan for the ceremony and who would be walking me down the aisle. I had already told Jakers and he approved, and even though they're pretty traditional they thought it was a great idea. I'm excited for the future. I've worked really hard for my life, and yes, I got super lucky with John and his family, and it's going to be a great rest of my life, and the wedding will be a great start to it. Sorry for the novels. Update 2. So after my last post I actually did the boring adult thing and sent the very clear, very boring email to my dad and Hildy spelling out what I wanted from them at the wedding. I said I was grateful they were coming, I hoped they'd have fun, and their only jobs were to show up, sit where the nice little card told them to sit, eat, drink, clap, and go home with one centerpiece if they were brave. I also looped in our planner, our officiant, and John, and I asked the officiant to change the "who gives this woman" part to "who supports this marriage" and have everybody say "we do." He loved it. I loved it. It felt like putting something heavy down I didn't know I was carrying. 2 small landmines I didn't anticipate. Hildy emailed me back asking about a father-daughter dance since we're being traditional after all, and then also wanted to know whether I'd set aside a special moment for a father's blessing. I told her no on both. We were doing a family dance after our first dance, and no one was blessing anybody. God and the bartender could fight it out. She sent me a thumbs up reaction. Just the thumb. The digital equivalent of tight lips and a deep inhale, which honestly is her Olympics. The second thing was about my younger sibling. I texted and asked what name and pronouns they wanted on their place card and program, and if they wanted to be in any photos with me while I was getting ready. We've always gotten along and I know it's been a lot for them over there, so I wanted to make it easy and not a thing. They sent me their name and a very nervous "is that okay?" And I wrote back more than okay, it's your name, and then they sent about 13 crying emojis and a heart, and I cried in the produce aisle like a lunatic. The week before the wedding was wedding week chaos in the fun way. John's mom and dad rolled into town with a trunk full of coolers like they were catering the thing themselves and a garment bag with the bracelet I was borrowing. My mom, are you sitting, got here a day early, with all the kids, with their luggage, with everyone hydrated, like some alternate universe competent tour manager. She did cry at my first fitting when she saw me in the dress, but then she went and got us both Diet Cokes and didn't try to put baby's breath in my hair for whimsy. so personal growth. Rehearsal day is where the circus tent normally goes up in my family and we all climb onto unicycles, so I was braced. The planner, bless her PhD in aunt and stepmom management, had everyone's names on cards taped to folding chairs and was using her teacher voice. Dad and Hildy arrived exactly 6 minutes late and together in that purposeful way where the lateness is a statement. Immediately, Hildy tried to slide their family row one forward so they'd be on our side. The planner very gently explained front left was for my mom and my siblings, front right for Dad and hers, and Hildy chirped that it was all one family. The planner didn't blink. Which is why everyone can see just fine from the front row, where they've been placed. Dad was quiet, which in dad language is actually loud. He did the thing where he looks around with his mouth open like he's tasting the air. He was also scanning for someone to back him up and there was no one. John's dad came over and hugged me and said, "Tomorrow, kiddo." My grandpa, my dad's dad, shook John's hand like he was closing a merger and then looked at me and told me I'd made a beautiful life. Grandma cried and asked about the flowers and if Jesse or Kyle wanted Sprite. Like, the normal grandparent script. It was such a relief it almost knocked me over. The rehearsal itself was short. The officiant did the line he'd do the next day where he asked everyone to stand to show they supported us and we all looked around at giddy little circles of family and friends popping up and it was honestly perfect. My sibling, my dad's, stood on my side because we'd asked them to escort my youngest sister down as a junior bridesmaid and it meant standing next to me at the front for a minute. They were shaking. I squeezed their hand. Hildy saw that and did the little inhale again and I felt John's sister move like a Labrador between me and her. I love that woman. Rehearsal dinner was at this little seafood place John grew up going to, all clapboard and twinkle lights and someone named Hank at the bar who literally taught John how to tie a tie when he was 12. His dad did a toast that was basically a comedy set and ended up being about me being tenacious with the softness left intact, which sounds like a fancy pastry but made me cry again. My mom didn't speak because we'd asked her not to, and she didn't even ask if she could anyway, which was the gift I didn't know I wanted. Hildy did decide to stand up. She started with as her father's wife, and you could feel 18 spines straighten at once. She said she was proud of me and happy for us and that it was so nice to see her dad involved. It had that tone like she was slipping a microblade into a wedding card. Before the air could go stale, John's mom stood up and said, "We're all lucky to be involved. The only requirement is that we show up and love them. Cheers." She clinked her glass with mine like a symbol and that was that. People went back to oysters. Crisis managed. Wedding morning, I woke up weirdly calm. My mom was on time. Jake showed up with coffees and one of those emergency kits with like 16 different kinds of tape because he is a king. John's mom clipped the bracelet on my wrist and then fiddled with my hair like 3 different moms have done to me exactly one time in my life and I had to look up to keep the mascara where it belonged. We did a first look with Jake because he was walking me and I wanted us to have a minute. He turned around, saw me, and burst into tears like a water balloon. He was like, "You look like all the dumb movies we used to watch when the princess walks out," and I had to put my head into his suit's shoulder so I wouldn't ugly cry on my own face. The only hitch before the ceremony was the place cards. I'd had the printer do them in fancy script with everyone's names and then our friend who does calligraphy hand letter the pronouns where people wanted them, which was my extremely not subtle way of having my siblings correct ones out in the open without making it a thing. I watched Hildy pick theirs up and her mouth do that little twist. My sibling tucked the card into their pocket like a talisman and grinned at me from across the room. Whatever happened after that, that moment alone was worth the whole logistical spreadsheet I'd lived inside for 6 months. The ceremony, okay. It was this big, light-soaked church because that's where John's family has always gone, but it felt smaller somehow, like the world shrank to just the aisle I was walking and Jake at my side and John's face at the end doing the trying not to cry smile. The music started and Mama got seated and patted my knee when she went past. Our little siblings did their walk and dropped petals like they were individually negotiating each drop with gravity. Then the doors closed, and it was just me and Jake, and he squeezed my hand and said, "We're doing it, babe," like we were about to rob a bank together, and we started down. I saw Dad. I saw him immediately. He was on the right, leaning forward, and his face had that tight, shiny look. Hildy had a death grip on his forearm. I won't lie, there was a beat where an older version of me in an old, hurt place wanted to turn around and hand my bouquet to an usher and run. Then I saw John take one involuntary step toward me even though he wasn't supposed to move and I felt Jake's hand and I felt my shoes and I remembered that the most honest thing I could do here was keep walking exactly how I planned to. Halfway down, per the plan, we paused. The music lifted, I took a breath, and I walked the last half by myself. This wasn't to jab at anyone, it was the truth I wanted under my feet. I've walked a lot of hard stuff by myself. It felt right to do it in a moment that was about me choosing my life. When I got to the front, Jake hugged me, kissed the top of my head like a dad in a sitcom, and sat. John took my hands and whispered, "Hi, wife," and I went all fuzzy at the edges. The officiant did the "Who supports this marriage?" And the whole room stood and said, "We do," and I can't explain it, but that one line knocked something loose in me I didn't realize was stuck. It didn't feel like giving anything away or being claimed by anyone, it felt like being held up by a net of people who meant it. I saw my sibling stand, chin up, like a baby deer trying very hard to be a grown deer, and my grandpa stand, and my mom stand, and even my dad stand because he'd be damned if he was the only person in that whole building not on his feet. The vows were simple and we read them and there was a small tremor in my voice only I could probably hear, and then we kissed and everyone whooped and then I was someone's wife and also still me. Magic trick. The reception was the fun part I'll replay forever. Our first dance was perfect, then the family dance started and I grabbed my mom and Jake, and John grabbed his sister and mom, and then my littles grabbed everyone else, and suddenly the floor was full and no one missed a father-daughter. 2 minutes that were never ours anyway. Dad hovered on the edge of the dance floor like a cat in a doorway. Hildy did the rounds with her wine like she was inspecting crops. At one point, my grandpa came over with a folded piece of paper. Inside was a photo of me at like 3, asleep in their recliner with a popsicle melted all over my hand, and a note that said, "We are proud of the woman you are. We were wrong not to knock our son's head together harder. Love, G&G." I laughed and cried at the same time. When I looked up, Grandpa had already shuffled away because he's Irish and feelings are what you hand people and then immediately leave the room. Dad approached me twice. The first time, right after the speeches, he said, "You look beautiful," and I said, "Thank you for coming," and we both kind of nodded like we understood our lines. The second time was later, out on the balcony where people were pretending cigars are different than cigarettes because weddings make everybody a 1940s movie star. He said, "You made your point." It wasn't angry, just flat, like he was inventorying damage. I told him I hadn't been trying to punish him, I'd been trying to tell the truth with my actions because words never really got us very far. I said I hoped when and if we had kids, he would show up for them in the way he keeps promising to show up for me next time. He started to do the apology routine I've seen 100 times, and I said, "You don't have to apologize to me tonight. Just do better or don't, but stop promising." He swallowed, and then he surprised me. He said, "Okay. Not I will, not I'll try, just okay." It felt like a door clicking closed that had been hanging open and banging in the wind forever. Not locked, not barricaded, just closed. We went back in. He danced with Hildy to a slow song and left before cake. The best part, the part I didn't know I needed, was my sibling at the end of the night. They found me by the dessert table with a brownie in one hand and my heels in the other and said, "Thank you for writing my name, and then you gave me a picture in my head of a day that isn't terrifying." I squeezed them so hard we almost went down. I told them if they ever want help getting out, or just space to be, they have it with us. John, who had been trying and failing not to eavesdrop, immediately promised them a car and a room and a pizza and 1 million episodes of whatever, and my sibling laughed like they hadn't in a long time. We did sparklers at the end because I'm basic and joyless people can fight me. My mom hugged me and whispered that she was proud of me and that she was sorry for the years she was learning on the job while we were the job. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't a speech, it was just the thing I needed at the exact right time. John's dad shouted, "Kiss her again." Like we were at a baseball game. People cheered. My cheeks hurt from smiling. I have never, in my entire life, felt so loved on purpose. We did a tiny mini moon for 2 days because work and money and real life, and when we got back there was a card from my grandma and grandpa with a check for an amount that made me sit down. The note said, "For your future, not to fix the past." I called to thank them and grandma said, "You had grit. You got it from your mother," and I thought, okay, yes, we are all imperfect little matryoshka dolls shaped like second chances. Dad hasn't followed up since the balcony. Hildy sent a text that said lovely wedding. That's fine. I don't need it to be more right now. The door is closed and if he knocks with something other than excuses, I'll open it. If he doesn't, I finally feel like that's not my fire to tend anymore. Anyway, if you were on the fence about a big wedding and you have the money or the support, do it. Let people who love you stand up and say it out loud. Let your brother cry on your dress. Let your mother be the version of herself she's been growing into. Let your kid's siblings see a road that looks like something they can walk down with their head up. Let your husband's family make space around you until you realize it's not charity, it's family. And for the record, the best picture of the whole night is my stoic Jake doing the chicken dance with a 3-year-old flower girl while holding my bouquet like a sword. The second best is me walking that last half alone, one step, then the next, like I always have, but this time with an entire room saying "we do" behind me. Sorry for the long update. It was a big day. Update 3. I thought the credits rolled when we drove away with sparklers and my hair full of bobby pins, but apparently, there was a post-credit scene where Marvel introduces a new villain named Passive Aggressive Facebook. 2 days into normal life, read, me in sweatpants handwriting thank you cards like a Victorian clerk and John trying to figure out why our dishwasher makes a noise like it swallowed a fork. My cousin texted me a screenshot of Hildy's status. It was a stock photo of a father-daughter dance with a caption about modern brides forgetting who raised them and a paragraph that could be summarized as tradition is dead and my heart is broken. She didn't use my name. She did tag a local church page. The comments were an even split of prayers up and people telling stories about their own weddings in 1992 where the DJ got drunk and played the Macarena 4 times. I did not engage. I ate leftover cake standing in front of the fridge and texted John's sister, who replied want me to unleash holy hell followed by 17 sword emojis. John's mom just commented, it was a beautiful night, grateful for family. If Grace could wear stilettos and a red lip, that comment did. I was still composing a mental TED Talk shower speech about boundaries when my phone buzzed with the only text that mattered. My younger sibling asking if they could come over after school and maybe just hang for a little. I said yes before the three dots even popped up. We drove to their school like we were in a heist movie, except our getaway car was a Subaru with 2 forgotten folding chairs in the trunk. They came out with their backpack and a plastic bag with a hoodie jammed in, saw me, and did this weird almost smile like their face remembered how at the last second. They climbed in, buckled, and didn't say anything for 2 blocks. Then, very quietly, Dad says I embarrassed the family with the place card. He took my phone for lying on paper. They took it back at school so they could text me on the library Chromebook like a hacker. I asked if they were okay. They nodded and lied. We stopped for milkshakes because I am a simple woman who believes in dairy-based triage, and then we went home. They sat on our couch like it had rules and we were going to fail them. John put on a movie without asking what they wanted and somehow picked exactly the right one, the one where weird kids skate in a pool and all the adults talk like trombones. We ordered pizza. We did not discuss anything heavy until after cheese had been applied. Then I said, "Do you want to crash here for a couple nights?" And they said yes so fast it felt like the word had been waiting in their mouth for weeks. I texted Dad to tell him where they were and got 2 delivered checks and then a phone call. He opened with, "Are you out of your mind, because why change the script now?" I said, "They're safe. They're watching a movie. They have school tomorrow. We can talk in the morning." He did the thing where he cycles through 3 tones like a radio looking for a station: angry, wounded, reasonable, before settling on lawyerly. "You can't harbor a runaway." I told him no one was harboring anything. This wasn't a pirate ship, and he could pick them up in the morning after we talked to the school counselor. He said no to the counselor, yes to picking them up now. I said no to now, yes to coffee at 8 a.m. He hung up. 5 minutes later, Grandma called me to say good girl, like I'd graduated from basic training, and told me she'd meet us at the school. Morning came and my stomach was doing parkour. My sibling got ready like it was an exam. They stood in our hallway with their new name on their backpack in tiny letters sharpied under the old one, and I had to look away for a second because I am not a crier before 9 a.m. The school counselor, Ms. Patel, guardian angel in a cardigan, had that warm professional voice that makes you want to tell her about the time you stole a button from Michael's in 7th grade. Dad and Hildy came in together like an offense line. Grandma materialized 10 seconds later and kissed my cheek like she just found me under a table in a cafeteria and was so relieved. We sat in a circle in those chairs that make adults look like they've been advanced shrunk. Ms. Patel opened with, "We're here to make a plan that keeps sibling's name safe and supported." Dad immediately said we never agreed on the name, and Ms. Patel, with the calm of 1,000 cups of tea, said, "You don't have to agree with someone's name to use it." Hildy brought out a laminated printout of a blog post about rapid onset like we were about to debate it. Ms. Patel put it aside without reading it. Grandma cleared her throat, which is her version of a subpoena. "We are not doing debate club. We are doing logistics." My sibling's leg was bouncing hard enough to power a small grid. I put my hand on their knee and they stopped like a record scratching. Ms. Patel asked if they felt safe at home. They said no and yes and sometimes and never when I correct them. She nodded and wrote that down. She asked Dad and Hildy to listen to what my sibling needed without answering right away. My sibling asked for 3 things: to be called their name, to not have their phone taken away when they correct someone, and to not have to go to church youth group when the youth pastor calls them sweet girl on purpose. They said it in a voice like a baby deer trying to cross a highway. Dad opened his mouth, and Grandma put her hand on his arm without looking at him. "Take a breath. We gotta compromise." It wasn't the one in my perfect world where people do the right thing because they realize love isn't conditional and are so proud of themselves they cry. It was paper and signatures and the kind of plan you tape to a fridge. Weeknights with us for a month, weekends with Dad if and only if names and pronouns are respected. No phone confiscation for language disputes. School records updated. This part was its own tiny battle that Ms. Patel won with a piece of paper and a call to the office where someone named Cheryl who has seen things said, "Oh honey, yes, we can do that today." Therapy through the school and a referral to the youth clinic in the city that has a Tuesday night group with pizza. Dad had to sign the temporary care form because Mom can't, different custody, different planet, and he stared at it like it might bite him. Grandma tapped the line with a pen. He signed and kept the pen like a consolation prize. I took my sibling home after school like we'd just adopted a cat and were stopping for a litter box. John pretended a bed didn't need building but somehow there was a bed, which is to say he and Jake had assembled an IKEA miracle while I was at work. John's mom dropped off a bag in case of teenagers that was 90% snacks and 10% a hoodie that she bought because I like this color on them, which made me stand at the kitchen sink and feel like my bones were humming. My sibling went to the first Tuesday group and came home with grease on their sleeve and a phone full of numbers labeled with weird little emojis. They smiled like I remember them smiling when they were 8 and got to stay up late and watch fireworks through the car window. Dad did show up at our door on Thursday anyway. He did that thing where he rang the bell twice in a row like he was trying to break through time. John and I opened it together because we are now a 2-headed Cerberus guarding a very soft center. Dad looked past us into the living room like he was going to catch us running a speakeasy. He said he wanted to talk to my daughter. I looked him dead in the eyes and said our sibling's name. He winced like I'd flicked his ear. We didn't let him in. We went down to the lobby. He tried to go around me twice in the conversation to talk over me to John, which was almost funny because the last person on earth he can out stubborn is my husband, who once ran a marathon in the rain because he'd put it in his calendar. He said we were making him the bad guy. I said I wasn't making him anything, I was removing a job he clearly didn't want. He said he was losing me. I said, gently as I could, you haven't had me to lose for a long time. He looked at me like I'd slammed a door, which I guess I had, but it was the same door on the balcony at the wedding, and I am allowed to close a door in my own home. Friday night he went to youth group anyway, and then texted me I don't like your tone, which made me laugh out loud standing in line at Target holding a shower curtain. Saturday they did dinner at his house and it was okay because Grandma was there like a human shield, and Hildy went upstairs to rest for 2 hours, which I suspect was her strategy for not screaming at the salad. Sunday morning we made pancakes and my siblings sat at our tiny table and told me something funny about their English teacher, and then they got very quiet and asked, "Am I ruining your first married month?" I put my fork down and told them that my first married month included a lawful ceremony where an officiant asked an entire room if they supported us, and we got a resounding yes, and that net is big enough to catch them too, and that this is not charity, this is family. And then I made a stupid joke about how all I ask in return is that they never eat the last pickle, and they laughed and stole a pickle, and I forgave them before the jar hit the counter. A week in, we went to my grandparents' Sunday dinner for the first time since the wedding. I braced for it to be weird. It was always potatoes and roast and whoever forgot to take their boots off tracking dirt in. It was exactly that. Grandma told a story about that time the dog ate the ham and everyone pretended not to remember that my grandpa sobbed like he'd lost a child. My siblings sat between me and John and Grandpa passed them the butter like he'd done it every week since they were born. At some point he leaned over and said, "Get your license as soon as you can." Best way to be free, I know, and I had a clear mental image of him at 19 and a half with a pack strapped to a Greyhound bus seat going anywhere, and then of my sibling parallel parking ourselves out of this with patience and 3-point turns and a community that waves them into the lane. In the background of all this domestic upheaval, my job decided to be a soap opera. My manager quit, which meant someone had to pick up the giant flopping fish of a project he left on the dock. I volunteered because apparently I've developed a taste for chaos, and at the meeting where they announced it, my boss's boss said, "She's tenacious with the softness left intact," and I texted John's dad because he is going to put that on a t-shirt for me if it kills him. He replied with a thumbs up and a photo of his grill because he's a dad. We are not a movie where one big speech changes everything. The next Saturday dinner, Hildy made a point of telling a story where she used every gendered word like a dagger, and my sibling pushed their chair back and said, "If you talk about me like I'm not here, I will act like I'm not," and then went to the porch and texted me a picture of a raccoon in the yard like a tiny burglar. Dad told me later that he's trying, which I believed for about 4 minutes and then did not because he followed it with, "But it's so hard for me." I told him, "It's harder for them," and he said nothing for once, which might be the first thing we've shared in a long time. 2 things surprised me. The first was an email from Dad on a Tuesday morning at 11:03 a.m., which is historically an hour of his life when he has Excel spreadsheets and meetings and not feelings. The subject line was group. The body said, "I went. Parents on Thursday nights. They said to try making it about the kid and not about me. I am not good at that. I will try again next week." No promises, no begging, just the smallest shape of something like accountability. I read it twice and then forwarded it to Grandma with. And she replied good, and that was that. The second was a tiny folded note from Hildy tucked into the sleeve of a casserole Grandma sent home with my sibling. It said, "I am not good at this. I am trying. I am sorry for Facebook." No signature. The casserole was some Midwestern concoction involving Ritz crackers and cheese that John inhaled. I stared at the note for a long time like it might turn into a better apology if I looked hard enough. It did not. But it was a note, and not a scythe, and I put it in the drawer with the batteries and the spare keys because I didn't know where else you store weird fragile things. There was one stupidly sweet evening that I will keep like a snow globe forever. The youth clinic had a little open mic night in the back room of a coffee shop where everyone clapped too loud and no one sang on key. My sibling read a poem. It wasn't polished. It was about a bird that didn't know where to land, so it just kept flying and then found a wire and sat. And the wire was the people who stayed. They looked up halfway and saw me and John's sister and my mom and Grandma all shoved into a banquette like clowns in a car, and they did not cry. They smiled without it looking like it hurt. After, we all went for ice cream and my mom did not bring up her hula hooping phase or offer to teach anyone yoga in the parking lot. She just put her arm around my shoulder and said, "Look at us," like it was a miracle we'd built with our own 4 hands, and it was. If you want a petty coda, Jake and I finally went through the wedding photos together, which was 90% us pausing to zoom in on someone in the background doing faces and 10% me narrating like a sports commentator. There is one where Dad is half smiling during the "we do" moment, like his face is remembering how, and one where Hildy is in the corner holding a wine like it's her enemy, and one where my sibling is mid-cheer with both hands up like a kid winning a spelling bee, and I ordered that one in a stupidly large print. It's going on the wall next to the pencil mark where we'll measure how tall they get in our house, because even if their time with us is temporary, I want it written into the bones of the place that they were safe here. I don't have a grand pronouncement to end this with. I have a door that is still closed but not locked. I have a pantry with 3 different kinds of cereal because teenagers are a mystery. I have a husband who kisses me in the kitchen and sends me calendar invites for sit on the couch and be vegetables. I have a brother who comes over and loses to a 12-year-old at Mario Kart while holding a slice of pizza and my bouquet because he took it home after the wedding and refuses to give it back because it brings the room together. I have grandparents who showed up for the second try and a mom whose apology wasn't aspirational, it was operational. I have a family that says we do out loud and then does. And, yes, because the universe enjoys a good bit, the dishwasher noise was a fork. We freed it like it was a tiny sword in a stone. John pulled it out with a flourish and declared himself king of the dishes. I curtsied. My sibling rolled their eyes and laughed. We are ridiculous. We are okay. We are, finally, ours.